All right, thank you for staying with us on Citizen Weekend. And as we get into the diplomatic playbook, let me set the stage. Now, we've had several statements released by the diplomatic community in relation to the protests we've been witnessing since last year. This statement was released a day to the one-year anniversary. And this is a joint statement by various embassies, and they include the US Embassy, UK, Ireland, Australian High Commission. The list is right on your screen. As citizens prepare to mark this anniversary, we call on all to facilitate peaceful demonstrations and refrain from violence. The use of plainclothes police officers in unmarked vehicles erodes public trust and was ruled unlawful by the High Court. We urge full compliance with this ruling. And we have, the statement continues basically to read, we are troubled by the use of, quote, hired goons to infiltrate or disrupt peaceful gatherings. We renew our calls for swift, transparent and independent investigations into all incidents of violence against peaceful protesters. Now, this did not sit too well with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and in response, and this is an excerpt of their letter, in response, Kenya remains a willing partner in the global democratic project, but cautions against expressions that are overly prescriptive and insensitive of the complex national and global environment in which all our states operate. And lastly, the statement continues to read, at times such as these, narratives pervade as truth must be vigilantly tested for objectivity and fairness. The ministry reminds us all that diplomatic partnerships flourish best in mutual respect. All right, as I promised earlier, we're joined by Professor Maria Nzomo, who is a Professor Emeritus of International Relations, Diplomacy and Governance, University of Nairobi. Notably, she was the first female at the University of Nairobi to attain the rank of full professor in International Relations, Diplomacy and Governance. But before then, she became the first Kenyan woman to obtain a PhD in Political Science and International Relations. She also served as an ambassador, and she served as Kenya's permanent representative to the United Nations and the World Trade Organization in Geneva, Switzerland, and earlier as Kenya's ambassador to Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Swatini, and Lesotho. And she is also a recipient of the Elder of the Burning Spear and Moran of the Burning Spear. Good to have you on set with us tonight, Professor. So, as a diplomat, is there a playbook where you're told when you go to your station where you're posted as an envoy, this is what you can say, this is what you cannot say?
Thank you, Olive, for having me. Yes, there is some kind of playbook. Diplomacy is taken very, very seriously, as you know, because that's the way states interact. It's a main avenue for interaction between states and even non-state actors. And it is one of the key methods that each country advances their national interest. And so diplomacy becomes a very important tool and is treated very seriously by all countries. So there has to be some kind of formal rules of engagement, which is what you are calling a playbook. At the national level, every country has its own do's and don'ts. In Kenya, when I was an ambassador, we used to call it a red book. But there is one common to everyone. And that is based on a treaty, which is very well known, called the Vienna Convention on diplomatic rules and modes of engagement and how to do's and don'ts, etc. And that's the main reference point in this case, in my view.
Okay. Because
we are looking at an issue which has to do with the relation between countries, and where, of course, from the statements you have read, it's quite obvious there is a conflict of interest here, and they are not seeing things from the same path. So if one has to really address this issue, the place to go to start with is the convention, the 1961 Vienna Convention. Mm-hmm. That's where the rules are contained. And the main one is contained in Article 41 on the do's and don'ts. And it's very simple. It says very clearly for the envoys who are hosted in various countries, the do nots include refraining from interfering in the internal affairs of the host state. It's very clear. Non-interference. That's point number one. The other one is that they should respect the laws and regulations of the host country. That's the second one. So those two, there is no controversy about them.
Okay.
The rest is just a matter of interpretation.
Okay. As a quick follow-up, what would non-interference qualify as?
Now, that's what I'm getting into.
Okay.
The area of non-interference sometimes can be very controversial, even within our region, let alone where we are talking about the people who are involved in this statement because they are from Europe and North America. Even within our region, we have had misunderstandings among member states about how far a country can go claiming what it is doing. The others should not say anything about it because it is matter of their own national, can I say national interest, maybe a part, sovereignty. Actually, the word is sovereignty. That anyone trying to interfere is actually interfering with their sovereignty, which is also provided for in the United Nations Charter. Yeah? But the question is how far you can go with this. And the AU, I want to start there before I come to this other one. The African Union, which is what succeeded the OAU, the Organization of African Unity, in its wisdom, found it necessary to revisit that clause of non-interference because too many people in the member countries had died unnecessary deaths because the other countries dare not. And they said, we need to revisit this. And the way they revisited it is to reduce this total non-interference clause by saying that there are those areas of domestic behavior which will be taken to be of interest to all, the entire humanity, whether it be African or not. And that would include genocide, crimes against humanity, etc. The ones that are normally handled by the ICC. That it will be necessary then for member states to intervene.
All right. In
what is practically considered internal affairs. Now, coming to just to give you just that scenario, that it is not so obvious, this question of non-interference.
Okay.
Coming to the international community, if you go back to the convention that I talked about, the Vienna Convention, there is a rider to this issue. Whereas it says, do not do this, it also says, and some people call it a gray zone, that an envoy, a foreign envoy, can make statements related to what is going on in a country if in their wisdom it is about universally agreed norms which the host state is also a party, which are being violated by the actions being taken by that state or failure to take certain action that should be taken. Those agreed norms would be the ones guiding whatever action they take. So
there is actually something like diplomatic oversight?
That's right. That's correct.
Because in the statement by MFA, they talked about commitment to this global democratic project.
And they kept saying we are concerned. And they said they are reminding Kenya of its global responsibility, issues of human rights, that they are universal. The upholding the rule of law is universal. All the democratic principles, including the various freedoms of expression, association, etc. Yeah? And that, there is no one who can say there are rights which only belong to certain people, especially the right to life, which is very fundamental. So this is the area of contestation. And one would be then saying, what were the envoys using in this case? They would say they were guided by international norms.
All right. Okay, so there are those who take the view that the US, for instance, given how it recently handled protests over immigration, has no moral authority to lecture Kenya on these norms. And the PS for Foreign Affairs, Korir Sungwe, went as far as to retweet on X space, it is now known as X, a video of a law enforcer in the United States saying, if you do this, you'll be arrested. If you do this, you will be killed.
To some extent, they are, the ministry is right. The behavior of the U.S. has been terrible in that respect. It is on record that, especially under the leadership of Donald Trump, even during his first tenure, he was not only dismissive of Africa, he has insulted the continent in the worst way possible, in unspeakable names, which we can't even utter here. But I would not want to use him as a rule. He is an exception in that regard. And in this particular case we are talking about, remember, this was a joint statement.
Yes.
It was not a statement of the United States of America.
Yes.
The U.S. was only one country out of 12 that signed into this. And what myself I would caution as someone who has been in diplomacy in practice, is that there are times when you have to step back and separate the person or the country from the message. This was a joint message, and look and analyze the content of the message itself rather than the certain individual countries who have been known for behaving badly internationally. Mm-hmm. Yeah? Because, to be fair, most of these countries, if you take them on one by one, they are all friends of Kenya in one way or the other. They are development partners. Their record is known here in terms of what they have invested in education, in health, capacity building, et cetera, and they are not normally rabble-rousers who are looking for reason to incite or provoke the whole state. And so when they say we are concerned, one would want to at least give them the benefit of doubt that they mean well. They're just telling a friend, we are concerned about the current situation. And as a friend, we are, requesting you to remember your international obligations in this regard.
Mm-hmm. And what do you make of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs response?
Actually, one again can see it in two formats. If you look at that whole statement, and not just at the excerpt that you showed there, the whole statement, the first part was very diplomatic, very measured. And it was just saying, the things you are pointing out in your statement, we are already doing, and we have the capacity to do those that we have not done. And you do not need to worry about, that this thing is going to escalate. That kind of language. You're telling your friend, in case you haven't noticed, we are okay. We are not doing so bad. It's only towards the end that, the extract you brought here came out. It was a very, I would say, for among the messages I've read lately, it was cautioned, stated with a lot of caution.
Measured.
Very measured, very measured indeed. And of course we know why, because these are friends and partners of Kenya. The two parties would benefit from escalating this situation. And we have to admit, Olive, the situation prevailing is not a very pleasant one. There are a lot of people who are angry, and who are very sensitive on both sides of this matter.
Right.
But, the Gen Zs are angry. They are angry with everyone, including the envoys. They are anyone who is not addressing their issues. Of course, the government is also sensitive because it has been accused of so many things.
So that informs actually my last question to you tonight. Could they be concerned because of Kenya's unique political context? We have had incidents in our history where the international community has been forced to come in and mediate.
If you can put that again, what are
I'm saying, could their concern be informed?
The concerns of the envoys.
Of the envoys, yes, be informed by Kenya's unique political context, because there have been cases where the international community has been forced to step in and mediate, broker the peace.
Yes, definitely they are, because, like I say, and the diplomats, traditionally, without doubt, any diplomat in any country, the first reason they are in that country, the reason they were sent there, is to advance the national interests of their own countries. Now, if they are in an environment where things are really unstable, they worry about their own investment. They worry about the security of their own people who are in the country. And of course, they worry about the region because some of them are accredited actually to several countries in that region. And Kenya, in this case, geopolitically speaking, is one of the most important players in this region. So when things happen here, they have implications for the region. Okay. Even the others are nervous. So this international community, my reading of it, when they act as they did, making a joint statement, they are saying, we are 12, but we are representing, the entire Europe and the entire Western Europe and North America, because Canada and the US, more or less, is North America. And we are also your friends. And you are part of the global community, just like us. So what we are saying is a concern that you need to think about for the sake of your own people, but also for the sake of the world, because you have an obligation that enjoins you, having signed the UN Charter and other universal treaties that are well known, or which provide for these issues.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Maria Nzomo, Professor Emeritus of International Relations, Diplomacy and Governance. Prof, I know you're also a gender activist, so to speak, so perhaps we'll stay tuned for this next report. Often misunderstood and stigmatized, coffin makers are sometimes accused of profiting from death, even by